Hey everyone, welcome to this new video. What I'm going to be doing is showing off step by step a bit of progress I'm making on building a new diorama insert for my IKEA Billy bookcase. So this is going to be slightly smaller than the previous one I did, but it will have a lot more sort of like scenery and terrain aspects to it, so it's going to be completely different in that respect. What I'm going to be working on is the throne room at Erebor. So anything basically for the Army of Thror could be used for them. Smaug, if I had one, although it'll be far too small for that. And then Erebor Reclaimed, so Champions of Erebor with obviously Iron Hills Dwarves thrown in there. Anything from those army lists could be displayed on this quite easily. So what I've started off with is a thin piece of, I think it's 3mm or 4mm Foamex. This has been cut to shape with a Stanley blade, and then I've sketched out a rough plan of what I want to do. So originally I was just going to mount everything directly onto here, but what I think I'm going to do is, now that it's arrived, I've got some XPS insulation foam, which is, would you believe it, exactly the same width from edge to edge as this is. So I think what I'll do first is the first layer will stick directly on top of this. So I'll do that, I think with contact adhesive, I think works best with this stuff. Might have to check first. And then I will weigh it down with some weights, probably books, because I don't own weights. Then on top of that, I'll cut out these sections here, because what will be happening is the pillars will sit here, and I want these bits to look like they're holes in the ground, sort of like recessed, so that it looks like, so the Peter Jackson films, it looks like there's a long narrow walkway leading to the throne. And I can't do that and display my models at the same time, but I want to make it look like this is elevated slightly. So the 4 pillars will go one in each corner. These are ones that I printed on my 3D printer. They're from a user on Thingiverse called Angelo's Workshop. I think he may have remixed them from someone else's design and added some cracks, but I'm not sure. I'm not really too sure. But they are really nice. Now these are all, some of them are solid resin prints, some of them are hollowed out. I've made another video about the fun that I had with it. I had considered putting them one on top of each other to make larger columns, but I think if I do that, it's just going to take up far too much room. And if I ever want to use this as a display board for a tournament, I wouldn't be able to do it because the columns would be so long that I'm sure the whole thing would collapse. So the 4 columns raised on a piece of foam board, then raised up a further one more thickness layer will be a couple of statues. Then we've got this first section here. This will be a step on the same level as the statues, then another step further up, and then finally a third step at the back with the throne. Then coming down from the throne, I think what we'll do is we may do it the other way around, but I've got some braziers here just to add a little bit of, I could go one at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom. They may all end up being roughly the same height if we factor in the height of the foam itself, just to add a little bit more decor. So yeah, that's the plan at the moment. That'll give me this section here for displaying my army, and it's not a particularly large army. I can't remember exactly how many I've got at the moment, but it's not many. So they'll all fit in the middle here, and because I've got the foam board, I'll be able to probably, hopefully, do some carving into it, carve some designs or something. Might even try carve a design similar to this. Bit like that. Onto the floor. Whatever this is. So yeah. This is the first part. Hopefully I'll be able to show some progress in the next couple of days. And I'll upload it all as one video as I go. Thanks for watching. Bye. So actually the very first thing I've gone and done is resketched the design again on top of this blue foam, because I realised if I stick this down, this is going to hide everything I've drawn out. So I've just sketched it, given myself a sort of like quick guide of where things are going to go and how high they should be. And as I was thinking about it, I can actually minimise the wastage here by taking out these 2 blocks, which are going to be taken away, and using them to lift up the pillars. And then, for example, these 2 blocks, which are going to be taken away, can probably help build up the steps a bit. So hopefully you should be able to minimise waste, because it's the first time I've bought this foam, and this has actually taken up a larger chunk than I expected it to. But if it's good, I'll buy more. So that's just a quick interjection there to show that I make mistakes as I go along, and that's how I'm going to fix it. So I'll stop here and come back when I've got some bits built up. So here's how the board is looking after I've added the blue foam. I've cut it all to shape, stuck it down with PVA glue, and used some cocktail sticks to reinforce it. Overall, so far, I'm quite happy with it. Think I may have benefited from cutting this from one solid slab. I've got quite a large gap there between the pieces, but hopefully I should be able to disguise that with stonework when I do the slabs. So at the moment you can see spaces for the pillars. Debating whether to cut these out or whether to leave them and just potentially paint them black. I feel if I cut them out, it's exposing these to being damaged if I ever move it. So not really too sure yet. There's a couple of scraps of blue foam on there, which I just need to tidy up some of the foam. But let me put down the pieces and you'll get more of an idea of how things are looking. So you can kind of see, I mean, being a very smart person, I decided to spray quite a lot of this black before filming, so you can't actually really see what I'm doing. So they may need a dry brush of grey just to make them stand out, but you can see the kind of effect which is starting to appear. So you've got the throne at the back here. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Throne at the back, statues at the side, pillars on the edge. Quite happy with it. Happy with how the raised platform's working. And if I were to, I just grab a couple of dwarves and put them up here, you can see the scale. It leaves quite a lot of space here for an Erebor dwarf army. 'Cause I'm not going to have many in the army. So that's the progress so far. Next up is designing what goes here. Trying to decide what I do, whether I go for some sort of bold geometric pattern or just potentially just go for slabs. But as it's a throne room, I think I want to have something a bit more fancy. So I might actually sketch some things out on paper and see how they look, rather than just going straight for it, because often when I just go straight for it, I mess it up. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with some more progress. So since the last segment, I've finished carving the design into the blue foam. It was actually surprisingly a bit easier than I expected it to be. And I am very happy with how the design has come out. So this is the sort of like Arkenstone symbol, or I don't know if it's like the sigil of the dwarves of Erebor from the Hobbit movie. And it's actually in the centre on the throne is where they keep the Arkenstone. So I thought something like that has to come into play here, so that it's quite obviously a regal throne room. So in the centre I've got the design here. I'm going to paint it, I'm going to keep things relatively faithful to the movies, so it's a lot of dark green, gold. I may try and do something which looks a bit like maybe marble or something for this big area around the outside here. Maybe a pale colour. Don't know, maybe a cream. I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it yet. But this is the first time I've used blue foam for this sort of thing. And I now know that every time I've bought foam previously, I've bought the wrong stuff. This stuff is so different to what I've used before. I can only assume that I've bought the wrong type of insulating foam. But this stuff is amazing. Cut it with a standing knife or a hobby knife. I know people do use hot wire cutters, which if you want a clean cut, that's probably much better. Along the edges here, I probably could have got a better cut if I'd used the hot wire cutter. You can... I tried to glue it together with PVA and it's not really worked. So I had to go around with some hot glue from a glue gun. I think that stuck it down. I'll see in the morning whether this warps or not. At the moment it looks pretty good, minor warpage. If any, I don't know if it's warped or if this is just the table, to be honest. You can carve it using either a hobby knife or a pen or something like that. All of this design, I went over first off the design with a pencil. I think this is a 4B, so this is quite a soft pencil anyway. So I was able to sketch out the design without leaving a mark on the foam. And then I went over the rest with a ballpoint pen. It's a regular biro. You just scratched sort of like 2mm into the surface. And yeah, it's come out quite nicely. Be interesting to see how it comes out once it's painted. I've put a layer of PVA glue on it to protect it from the aerosol when I come to spray it. I may put another one down because I don't want any small bits getting missed and then potentially eaten away by the propellant of the aerosol, so I've got to be careful with that. But it's looking pretty good. I mean, if I just pause quickly, just putting some of these up. Again, can't really see it because they're all sprayed black. But yeah, you can see the same design. Same design on there. Yeah. Overall looking pretty good. I think once this is painted, it should be relatively quick to finish off. There's not exactly like there's a lot of flocking or detailing to be added. That's all done now, it's on the foam. So I'll come back once this is sealed and once I've sprayed it, and I'll start making some progress on painting it. I've been making some very satisfactory progress on actually painting the piece, so I thought I'd just take a step back and talk you through what I've been doing. After giving everything a coat of PVA glue to make it slightly harder, I then gave it a spray of black undercoat. I just used the regular Halford's spray paint. I was a little bit worried because I didn't really know whether the foam had all sealed, but from the looks of things, none of it's disintegrated, so it all seems to be good. After that, I thought I needed to try and do the marble effect, and I didn't want to just use a dry brush because it wouldn't really give the speckled effect that you'd get from marble. So after looking on YouTube, I found a couple of videos where they use sponges. So I went out to my garage, ripped up a chunk of an old car sponge, and started to experiment. And what I ended up with is actually come out quite nicely. The effect seems to have worked better on the statues and the pillars than it has on the actual foam here. And I think I'd put that down to the fact that this has got a texture on the actual surface. So I went over the foam after it, or before I sealed it, with a ball of tin foil just to add some texture, which meant that when I've touched it with the sponge, it's not quite given the same sort of pattern as it has on a smooth surface. It's not a problem, it just means I think I might have a little bit more work to do on this, perhaps with some washes and then some successive dry brushes, but that's no big deal. I've used a couple of different colours, mostly green and white. I started off with the Vallejo heavy green, just dabbing that all over, getting the sponge, dipping it in the paint. First off, I just went straight onto the foam, straight onto the pillars and the statues, because it didn't really matter. I was just sort of going over the black to give it a little bit of a coat. I had actually started using black mixed with the heavy green, but it basically looked black anyway, so I just went straight back to the heavy green. Then I added in a little bit of Vallejo Goblin Green, just for a little bit of extra contrast, and then some white. And I've just built it up using several different layers. And I've got one more layer to go on the statues and things, so what I might do is video that process for you. In the centre here, I've just given it a coat of, I think it's, 1 second, I had it hidden over the back, Vallejo Bone White, which is like an off-white beige colour. And you can see that's the original colour. This has been given a wash of strong tone. So I think what I might do is end up giving the whole thing a wash of strong tone. But the strong tone just goes into the recesses, on the pattern in particular, and redefines it so that you can really see the pattern standing out. I'll probably give this all a dry brush and try to bring it back up closer to the original colour itself, and then maybe some white, because this bit wants to stand out quite a lot. But that's about it really, that's how I've done it. I'll pause here and I'll come in a bit closer and show you how I've tackled the columns itself. So here are the columns and the rest of the scenery. Only difference so far is that this throne has had a green wash put on it. It just brings the colour a bit darker and brings the tones together. So I'll be doing that on everything. I'm just waiting for a green wash to turn up in the post. The final step I'm going to take, and the one I'm going to show you now, is a final coat on these pieces. I might do it on this as well, don't know, we'll see how it goes. So I'll pick a piece as an example. I'll use one of these columns, and to be honest, it's not, you don't particularly have to be neat. You can see there a big bit where I've sort of, there goes a bit better focus, where I've missed and just had a whole chunk of paint gone there. But it doesn't really matter, because hopefully that wash will tie it all back together. So what I'm going to be doing this time is a little bit of goblin green, give it a little shake, goblin green in there. I'll be using a little bit of, or quite a bit of white, as I want this to be quite a pale end coat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit of the heavy green, just to sort of like, that should just bring it back to being a similar colour as to what's been used so far. Get a brush and give this a mix. Just gonna use a brush. You can see it is a very, 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 very pale. You can't see anything because my hand's in the way. It's a very pale green. And that's fine, because to be honest, the majority of this isn't actually going to end up on the model. Rub as much off as I can. Now I think I'm going to have to take an extra step on this one that I didn't previously. So I'm going to use a sponge. Don't really want to use this smooth surface. I want to use the surface that I've ripped, because it's got a bit more texture to it. So I can kind of hold it, squeeze it so that it gives me a semicircular shape. Make sure this is focusing properly, otherwise you're not going to see anything. Dip it into paint, get a decent amount on the sponge, and then what I was doing actually, I was taking most of it off by just sponging it on something else, and then lightly, you probably can't even actually see how it's changing. Very light coat. See? What I might do is, here's the before. See, relatively dark. And there's the after. You might not be able to see much difference, if at all, but it just lightens it a bit. And it's going to be that last layer I want. To be very careful I don't put too much on. Right, See if you can see a difference between. Let's try and adjust my light. You can't really see much difference at all. But there is a difference if you look at it. Yeah, you can kind of see the difference. This is much lighter. But yeah, just wanted to give a quick sort of like show on how I've done this. These are probably going to need a wash just to pick out the crack detailing again, so they show up. But overall, very happy how these are looking. Trying to work out how to work some gold into this, perhaps. I'm not really too sure how. Maybe some gold speckles, I don't know. I don't want to overdo it with adding gold. I might see what I can do. Anyway, I'll be back soon, hopefully with the next part, which should, I think, fingers crossed, be putting everything together. Cheers. So although it's been a little while since I filmed the last segment for this, I've actually been just getting on and finishing off the last couple of pieces. So now I think I'm finally ready to call this done. Since the last video, I've touched up some of the gold paint here and there where it needed to. I've sort of given another wash on some of the edges to make sure that the sigil there stands out. I've attached the columns, I've attached the statues, I've attached the throne, I've attached these braziers, which I've printed as well. I've gone for more of a brass colour on them because I didn't want them to look too gold, because then everything will be gold. But that's all been attached. I've painted these parts here just to try and give the illusion that they're actually sort of like a pit. So there's holes there which I suppose would lead down to caverns or whatever, I don't know. But I'm quite happy with how it looks. It fits nicely in my cabinet, which is what the whole point of this was going to be. So what I might do now is just grab out some of my Erebor models and put them on here, just as a sort of like mini display. I'll take some pictures as well, so I can add some of these at the end, but I'm overall very happy with it. Didn't really take too much effort. The hardest thing was making sure I got the prints right, so generally very happy. I'll get some still shots and add them on the end, but I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to hopefully try and do some more videos like this. I'd like to do an Orthanc build for Isengard. I've got quite a large Isengard army, so it'd be nice to fill a shelf with a display for that. But thanks for watching, and I shall be speaking to people soon. Cheers, bye.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to find our long forgotten gold. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night. The fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light.